Hi everyone, it's time for another training video. This video is a short one. It's just on baking bagels. The bagels have a program set for them. It's program number 1. It's important to use that program because that has the steam setting set correctly so that the bagels will steam while they're in the oven, which is important to them getting a good crust. But the thing with that program is that the bagels have to be a certain way when they go into the oven in order to turn out properly. So if it's the first batch in the day, then that program will work and cook them perfectly. But as the day goes on and more things are cooked, the oven temperature changes. If the bagels are left out before they go in the oven, then the temperature changes on that. And so there has to be some adjustment made so that the bagels turn out each time. So if the timer goes off, when the timer goes off, that's your indication that it's time to check the bagels, not that it's time to pull the bagels out. And this is the case with bagels, but it's also the case with everything else. When the timer goes off, there's like a 5-minute range there, and that's the beginning of the range. So you want to check them there to make sure they're not burning, but you don't necessarily want to take them out. So if you need to give them an extra 5 minutes, then do that. And check them in another couple of minutes and see how they are, because if you pull them out before they're done and they cool down, then if you need to put them back in, you need to wait for them to heat back up. So instead of 5 minutes extra, now it's 20 minutes extra, because you have to get them heated back up to where they were before you give them those extra couple of minutes. So now we're going to go and look at a couple of trays of bagels that were taken out too early and talk about leaving them in for another couple of minutes. So see you out there. So these are bagels that were taken out too early, and as you can tell when you look at them, there's like no brown on them at all. I mean, they are just barely even done. If you go up to this one on the side, that is just starting to turn the color that you want, and this one is a little bit over here. But the body of these other bagels, they're all white and anemic, and that's not what you're looking for. And this one right here, these are onion bagels, and the onions have browned, but the bagels themselves, if you look at them, are all light colored like that, and you want to get some color on them so that they're done. So we're going to look at one more batch of bagels that is slightly underdone, just so that you know what underdone bagels look like. They're all puffed up and everything, they look beautiful, but they just need a little bit more brown on them.
It's a great place to live. Great benefits.
They treat you well.
Thanks.
Of course, have a good one.
So here's an extra sheet pan of bagels that was put back into the oven for an extra couple of minutes. See how these are all golden brown? These were put back in for just like three or four extra minutes. So in order to do that, you just go over to the oven and you turn this timer over to like 3 minutes or however much more you want to give it, and push the start button. And then when it goes off again, you come and check them. This is an example of a bagel that's actually slightly overdone. You don't want to let it get quite that dark. It's not burned, but you don't want to let it get quite that dark if you can help it. You want to go more towards this. These are perfectly cooked. While we're at it, we have some cinnamon rolls that we're going to look at and see if they're done. You want to put those onto the recipe that's called for on the card, and then when the time goes off, you want to check their temperature, because there can be a lot of variance in that as well. So in order to tell if they're done, you just take a thermometer and you put it in so that the probe is going to be in the center. If you put it too far down or too far up, it's going to read incorrectly because it'll be too close to the bottom. So if you look at this, you can see that this cinnamon roll, where to go, there it is actually completely done, because you're looking for 180. So we're going to take these out. These are out. We're going to check them one more time. So here's our temperature probe. And just go in from the side, and don't go down too deep where you hit the pan or it's going to read too hot. So just go across. Another thing you can do is pull it out, and if it's clean, then you're pretty good. But if it brings out a bunch of dough clumps, then you're probably not. So looking down at what it's reading, this is going to be a little hard to read, but we're over 200, so these are done. So I'm going to adjust the cooking time so they cook a little bit less, but these are definitely done. So in order to finish these off, you just put a gray scoop of frosting on the top of each one. So one there, and then Let them sit for a minute so that the frosting melts, and then just spread the frosting out and you are all set. So I'll do a quick image. So you want a nice big generous scoop to go on each one that comes out the top of the scoop. You don't want them to be level. So you just fill all these up and then let it sit for a couple of minutes, and while it's sitting, the frosting is going to soften up, and then you can take an offset spatula like this one right here, and once it's soft, these will spread a lot easier. And then what you do with baked goods once they're done is take them out and put them on the front counter so the customers can see them. And when customers see things that are fresh out of the oven, they're much more inclined to buy them than if they are not. So you want to take advantage of the fact that these are fresh out of the oven, take them up front, put them on the counter in customer view, still on the tray, and they will sell like hotcakes. Okay, thanks for your attention. Bye for now. One thing you need to watch out for is when the timer goes off and you open the door and close it, it's going to go back to the time that's for the full baking cycle. So you need to adjust this to go back down to 5 minutes. Oops, you don't want to leave it on infinity. And then push the start button, it'll go. And it says right here, start timer. That's what it means. If you don't push the start timer button, it will just sit there at 5 minutes, and 2 days will go by and it'll burn everything in there. So you want to make sure that you start the timer so that it goes off, because otherwise the oven will just stay on. And another thing while I'm here that I'd like to mention, anytime the oven is on, the timer needs to be on. So if nothing is in the oven, set the timer for like 5 or 10 minutes and start it, just to remind you that the oven is going. A couple of times the oven has been left on overnight, and that's really expensive. So every time the oven is on doing something, make sure that the timer is on. Okay, thanks. So we're going to put this batch in for another couple of minutes. These are Asiago cheese. You can see those are very pale. So we're going to put them back in, give them an extra. Now we're going to peek in on some bagels that we put back in for an extra couple of minutes and see how they're looking. And those are looking much better. See how golden brown they are? So we're going to take those out now. Here's our timer gone off with bagels. This is what it does. So you want to turn it back on for 3 minutes with the knob, and be sure to push the start button so it starts counting down. Remember, always have the timer on when something's in the oven or when the oven is empty. Anytime the oven is on, you want the timer on, okay? So here are our pans out front. When a customer comes in and comes up to the counter, they see all those awesome bagels down there. So when you first put the frosting on, you're not going to be able to spread it until it softens. It's going to be too hard. But once it softens, you can move it right around anywhere you want it, and it'll be easy. You want to get it moved around before the frosting cools, because once it cools, if you go to change it, it'll leave creases on the top, and you'll see what I mean if you do that. But you can sprinkle them, spread them on the far side if you're right-handed, like that, and then just rotate the whole tray 180 degrees and catch the other side. And remember, with cinnamon rolls, put them up front. Make a Facebook post if you can. Put them up front so that people can see them. Okay? Great work. Also, make sure you go to the very end with the frosting. See, this right here is not acceptable, because nobody's going to want to eat a part that isn't frosted. So you don't want to go too far, or it'll drip off the edge, especially if it's hot. But you want to make sure to go all the way to the edges. Okay? That looks great. Thanks. I almost forgot something super critical. You want to wait until the bagels are stone cold before you cut them and before you package them. And what sometimes people will try and do to be more efficient is take these warm bagels right out of the oven and start packing them. You don't want to stack them when they're hot, because they will push down the ones underneath them and make an indentation. And you don't want to package them when they're hot, because if you do, they're still throwing off steam and they'll mold in like 2 days. And we've had some come back because they were moldy, and we were finally able to track it down to being packed while they're hot. So before you cut them, if you need one for an order, you're going to have to cut it. But before you cut them in half and wrap them in bags, you want them to be stone cold so they don't mold. So here is a video, a shot of ones that we put back in the oven, and they have a nice brown on them now, and the cheese is nicely brown. They look great.